Hey folks, this is Mitch over at IndySoft. It is Tip Tuesday, and this week we're going to make a quick video for you folks on how to configure and set up end of the month scheduling. Last week I was in a demo and I had two different scenarios come up regarding this. One was with a manufacturer, and they wanted to set up end of the month scheduling for all the companies globally in their database. So to set that up, what you would do is you would just get logged in as an administrator, head over to your preferences section, and then we'll pull up preferences by system wide. Once we are here, we're going to go to the third tab called due date settings. So there's a handful of different options in here because we do a very flexible scheduling system. However, in this video, I want to point out in this date adjustment drop-down area, you can toggle the system to date adjust your schedules to the last day or the end of the month. So when we set this up, again, we've done this under system-wide preferences, so this is actually going to be applied to all companies, all equipment in your database. So to go over and point this out, I'll pull up at Mitchell Manufacturing. This happens to be up on my equipment view. You'll see my schedule. I've got a 12-month frequency and interval established, and if I were to actually go and calibrate this item, what it's going to do is, even though it's the 20th, it's going to make our due date either the 30th or 31st or potentially even the 28th, depending on which month it is. But in this case, it's August, so it's actually going to set my due date to be August 31st, which is the last day of the month. When I mark this as complete, you're going to see that, right? So if we take a look here in my scheduling tab, which gets updated upon the calibration, my last date performed was 8/20, and then my next due date is 8/31. So that happened globally across the database for any equipment because we set up the global end of the month setting. Now the next scenario I want to show you is we have some customers, particularly commercial Cal Labs, and I actually got asked this quite a bit back when I used to be in the implementation and a trainer, is what if we only want to do this for certain customers? This is really specific to commercial Cal Labs because not all of your customers are going to want end of the month scheduling. It's only going to be certain ones that want that, certain ones that want the last day of the month to show up on the cert, the sticker, the recalls. So in this case, if we're a commercial Cal Lab and we only want this for certain customers, we're not going to set up the system-wide end of the month option. We're going to go back and set this back to none. But what we do want to do is we want to create like a flag or a field for each of these customers. So the best way I think to do this is we're going to utilize our system-wide user-defined fields. And inside of here, you have the first two tabs. It's called Company Labels, page 1 and 2. Well, this is where you can set up custom fields per company or at the company level if you need that. Now what I've done is I've taken my customer user-defined status boxes and I've just typed in the alias end of the month scheduling. Okay, so basically what that enables is now if I pull up one of my customers, which is under Add Edit Companies, and let's say I pull up the Mitchell MFG, and let's say that I want to enable end of the month scheduling for them. Well, now I can go to my custom info and I can just simply check that box. Okay, so now I've got that end of the month flag set as checked or true. Now, let's say that my ABC company, type that incorrectly, let's say my ABC company does not want that. Well, under that custom field, you'll see the field is there, but I'm not toggling that on or I'm not enabling that for my company ABC. So now, we've set up the flag, but then we need to go configure our event to look at that flag. Okay, so here's the other configuration piece of doing this. So what we want to do is we want to go to Workflow Configuration, and I actually have that open in the background already. And we want to pull up the event that updates our schedule, which in this scenario, it is the calibration event. Now, when we go to step 7, called Schedule Updates, this is where you will see your rules that are enabled that update schedules. Now, if I double click on this, what we're going to see is for our schedule type called calibration, we're doing no update if it fails, and we are using our system-wide due date options. So in this case, my system-wide due date options, they're actually are not doing any type of adjustments. So this rule is going to apply to essentially any company, any equipment in my database at the moment. But what I really want to do is I want to add a filter, and I only want this to apply if that new field that we just created, which is in my case called company end of the month scheduling, is unchecked. So I want to utilize my system-wide due date options if that new customer flag that we created is unchecked. But what I also need though is I need an additional calibration schedule rule that is going to, if it is a end of the month customer, that is going to do something different. So in this scenario, I don't want to use my system-wide options. I'm going to uncheck this box. So what we're going to see if I hit OK is I've got my first calibration schedule rule. Well, this one applies if my company end of the month is unchecked. However, I need to go to my second rule that I just created, and I actually want to set it up with a filter that this will only apply if my company end of the month is checked. So I'm going to go grab that new custom field and I'm going to toggle that to checked. But the last thing that we want to configure and set up is we want to actually pull up the schedule update rules options, and I want to toggle this to end of the month. So it's very much like we did in the very first part of the video where you can set it globally, but now we're kind of doing the same thing in the workflow configuration wizard, so it can apply only if a filter is satisfied. Okay, so if I hit OK and we'll hit save, and of course with any workflow configuration changes we need to do a refresh. But if we recall from just a moment ago, my Mitchell manufacturing company is set up, I believe, let's just pull this up. I believe this company is set up to have the end of the month scheduling enabled with my checkbox. So let's pull up a piece of equipment here, and this one I've already calibrated, so let's go pull up a different asset. Let's take item MJ1, which it's got a due date of the 20th of August, okay? So let's calibrate this device, and as I calibrate this one, and of course I'm going to pass it so my schedule updates, but what it's going to do is because that global or that system-wide flag that we created is checked for this company, it's actually going to set my schedule to be due at the end of the month, even on this item. You can see that there with my 8/31 due date. Now, the other company that I had set up was my ABC company in the database, right? So you can see on this given piece of equipment here that my due date is also 8/20/2019. Now, if I calibrate the piece of equipment for this customer did not have that end of the month scheduling flag enabled or toggled on. So as I proceed through, mark this calibration as complete, what it's going to do is it's going to make my due date, here's the day my last date performed, my due date is exactly 12 months later. So there's the difference there, right? We had the system-wide flag that we set, and then you can either enable that or disable that at a company level based on what we set up. So again, basically what we did is we created a custom alias for this company status field, and then we modified our workflow configuration to look at that status field. So to take a quick look at the workflow again, basically what we do is inside of step 7, if you need to do this only for certain customers or maybe it's even certain types of equipment, you can use these filters to identify when your schedule rule needs to kick into play and become applicable. So again, in our case, what we created today is if that field called company end of the month scheduled is unchecked, we're going to use our system-wide due date options. However, our secondary rule is going to fire or execute if that field called company end of the month schedule is actually checked. So you can actually use any of your user-defined aliases, any of your equipment table fields, company table fields to define and update these different rules. So even though this video is really specific to end of the month scheduling, you can also use the same contents and apply that to other ways that you need to modify your schedules for specific scenarios or specific customer requests. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope this video helps out. If you do have any questions, as always, please contact myself or please never hesitate to contact our support team. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you.